Have a very good day, all of you. Welcome you all to this e-content video, which is based on the literary criticism. Particularly, this e-content video is going to deal with the critical theories of Aristotle. Myself, D. Tilagavati, Assistant Professor of English, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, College of Science and Humanities. Yes, I would like to give a brief intro about Aristotle. Aristotle, who is the distinguished disciple of Plato and tutor of Alexander the Great. He has written half a dozen critical treatises. In that, only two are available now. They are Poetics and Rhetoric. What is this Poetics about? This Poetics treatise is about the art of poetry, which deals with many more problems of literature, and it has attracted more greater than rhetoric. Rhetoric, it is about the art of speaking, in which he has sorted out various principles from established practice that are made for good poet and an orator. Yeah, let's see the plan of Poetics. It is the treatise of 50 pages. Poetics, it is the treatise of 50 pages in 26 small chapters. The first 4 chapters and the last 25th chapter, these chapters are devoted to poetry. These chapters are devoted to poetry. The 5th chapter, it is about the comedy, epic and tragedy. The 5th chapter, it deals with comedy, epic and tragedy. The next following 14 chapters are exclusively for tragedy. Aristotle has contributed the following 14 chapters exclusively for tragedy. The next 3 chapters of poetic diction. Okay, poetic diction, the next 3 chapters deal with. The following next 2 chapters, those are for epic poetry. The next 2 chapters are for epic poetry. The last chapter, that is the 26th chapter, is about the comparison of epic poetry and tragedy. Yes, how Aristotle has observed, how he has presented his observations on poetry. Let's see is first. Okay, subheading, that is 1, nature of poetry. He calls poet as an imitator who copies. Imitator means who copies some other, who imitates one of 3 objects. Aristotle says that the poet, as an imitator, he copies any one of these 3 objects. What are those 3 objects? Things as they were, or things as they are, as in past or present. That is, things as they were in past or things as they are in present. The next thing, things as they were said or thought to be believed. Things as they were said earlier and thought earlier to be believed. And third one, things as they are ought to be. What is ideal? What is to be perfect? Things as they are ought to be. How they have to be. What is ideal? What is perfect? Okay. So, the poet imitates one of these 3 objects. Yeah. Plato's idea of poetry. Okay. So, Plato's idea of poetry is that it reveals truths of permanent or universal kind. The poetry of the idea of poetry by Plato, okay, reveals truths of permanent and poetry. But Aristotle's idea of poetry is contrary to this. Okay, contrary to Plato's idea of poetry. To prove this, Aristotle, he compares poetry and history. Okay, what does he say about poetry? Yeah. Poetry, it relates what may happen and more philosophical. The pictures of poetry are the truths embedded in facts. Poetry, what does he say about poetry means? He says that poetry, it relates what may happen and more philosophical. The pictures of poetry are the truths embedded in facts. About history, Aristotle says what? He says that history relates what has happened and more particular. Okay, he says that history relates what has happened and more particular. Okay, it is the records. The history is the records of particular persons, places and things. History is the records of particular persons, places and things. These are the differences given by Aristotle for poetry and history. Okay. Next, the second subheading, the function of poetry. That is one among the observations of poetry by Aristotle. What is the function of poetry according to Aristotle? Aristotle, he says that the function of poetry is to please as well as is to teach. Is to please as well as to teach. Okay, so to please both the poet and the reader. If teaching is also included in this pleasing, such pleasure is superior to all others, he says. Okay, Aristotle says that the function of poetry is to please as well as to teach. He says that it has to please both the poet and the reader. If teaching is also included in this, such kind of pleasure is the superior to all other kind of pleasures, he says. Next one is emotional appeal of poetry. Okay, very particular thing that we have to look at. He has taken tragedy as the highest form of poetry because he says that tragedy, it arouses emotions of pity and fear. It arouses emotions of pity and fear. These emotions lead to purgation or catharsis, that is cleansing the soul. It means that everybody has pity and fear in our own life and is accumulated into the unwanted matter of our soul. So in tragedy, what we witness, while we witness the sufferings of others, those accumulated emotions find a free outlet and the soul emerges as nobler than before. So the emotional appeal of poetry is not harmful but a healthy giving and artistically satisfying. So the emotional appeal of poetry is not harmful but health giving and artistically satisfying. Yes, so then observations on tragedy by Aristotle. Okay, first he talks about the origin of tragedy, how the tragedy was origin. Okay, poetry imitates two kinds of actions, the noble actions of good men which became the epic and the mean actions of bad men which became the satire. Later, the tragedy aroused from the epic and the comedy aroused from satire. So, epic and tragedy are superior to satire and comedy. Between epic and tragedy, tragedy is superior to the epic with music, spectacular effects and compact design. Let me repeat it again. Okay, so the origin of tragedy, about origin of tragedy. Okay, let's see it. Poetry imitates two kinds of actions, the noble actions of good men which became the epic and the mean actions of bad men which became the satire. Later, this tragedy aroused from this epic and comedy aroused from satire. So, epic and tragedy are superior than satire and comedy. And also, between epic and tragedy, tragedy is superior to epic since it is with music, spectacular effects and compact design. Then, characteristics. What are the characteristics of tragedy? Tragedy is an imitation of copying of serious, complete action in certain magnitude. Magnitude means length, in certain length. These artistic ornaments such as rhythm, harmony and song are designed so as to enrich the language of play. Okay, tragedy, it is the imitation of serious, complete action in certain magnitude, that is in certain length. The artistic ornaments such as rhythm, harmony and song are designed so as to enrich the language of play. The form of action distinguishes from narrative verse, that is epic. The form of action that is distinguished from narrative verse, that is so-called epic. We can see the difference between the epic and tragedy as it is given by Aristotle. First difference, what is that? If we look at epic, poet is the narrator of the story. Okay, poet in epic, poet himself is the narrator of the story. In tragedy, the tale is told with the help of living and moving characters. In tragedy, the story is told with the help of living and moving characters. Is the first difference. Then second difference, poet is free to speak as own person. Since in epic, since poet is the narrator, he is free to speak as own person. But in tragedy, all the narration, the entire story is done by the characters. Okay, done by the characters. And the third difference, okay, epic is intended only to be read. Okay, we can only read the epic, but tragedy intended to be acted as well as read. It can be read as well as acted, tragedy. These are the three major differences given by Aristotle between epic and tragedy. Then, the constituent parts of tragedy. What are the important, that is significant constituent parts that should be in a tragedy? Aristotle, he defines 6 constituent parts in tragedy. What are they? They are plot, character, thought, diction, song and spectacle. What are they? Once again I tell you. Plot, character, thought, diction, song and spectacle. First, the first 3, plot, character and thought, are the objects of imitation. Okay, are the objects of imitation. Only based on imitation we can create the plot, characters and thought. What is this plot? It is the arrangement of incidents. Plot is the arrangement of incident, and the plot is the arrangement of incident, and it is the chief part of tragedy. Okay, then characters. Tragedy gives priority to actions, and so these actions can be performed and delivered by the characters only. So the importance is given characters next to plot in tragedy. The third one, thought. It is about the characters' mental and emotional reactions. Thought is about the characters' mental and emotional reactions. The next two, diction and song. Diction and song are the medium to imitate these objects. What are those objects? Plot, character and thought. These 3 objects. To imitate these 3 objects, diction and song are used in tragedy. Finally, the spectacle. Okay, the viewing. Okay, spectacle is the manner, in which manner the tragedy is presented to the audience, presented to the public. Okay, so in which manner, that is in which way of representation or presentation the tragedy is presented to public, that is spectacle. So these are the 6 constituent parts of tragedy discussed by Aristotle. Yes, fine. Then, structure of plot in tragedy. How the structure of plot should be in tragedy as it is discussed by Aristotle. Let's see. Structure of plot should be based on 3 unities. What are those 3 unities? Unity of action, unity of time and unity of place. Unity of action, unity of time and unity of place. First, unity of action. What is this unity of action? Play should have only one action that it follows with no or minimal subplots. With no subplots or minimal number of subplots are allowed. Action should be only one. Actions of one man cannot be put down to another, which will disturb the unity. Okay, actions of one man cannot be put down to another, which will disturb the unity. That's why Aristotle says unity of action should be followed. What is unity of action? It should have only one action that it follows, okay, with no subplots or minimal number of subplots. Next, unity of time. The action in a play should occur over a period of no more than 24 hours. Not more than 24 hours. The story should have happened within 24 hours. Only that kind of plots can be used for tragedy as it is shown by Aristotle. Next, unity of place. A play should exist in a single physical space and should not attempt to compress geographically. Unity of place. A place should exist in a single physical space and should not attempt to compress geographically, nor should the stage represent more than one place. Yeah, I think it should be so clear. That is, unity of place as mentioned by Aristotle, what it is means. Okay, the place that is chosen for the plot should be the only one place. It should not attempt to compress the geography. It should not attempt to compress the geography. That is the idea given by Aristotle for unity of place. As we see in our contemporary cinemas and dramas, okay, from one place, suddenly it should not move to another place. Suddenly the next place shouldn't be shown. That is the meaning for unity of place according to Aristotle. Then, finally, plot is divided into two parts. What are those? Any plot is divided into two parts according to Aristotle. Complication, and the second part is unraveling or denouement. Okay, what is this complication? Ties events. Okay, knotting the events into tangled knot, which includes from beginning to the point where it takes turn for good or evil. This part is rising action. Complication. What is complication? The plot is tied with tangled knots, that is from the beginning to the point. From that point, it takes a turn either for good or evil. This particular part is rising action. The next part is unraveling or denouement. What is it? It unties again from the rising point. Okay, it unties, it unreveals, which extends from turning point to the end. This is falling action. This is unraveling or denouement. Yes, finally, he discusses about the difference between simple and complex plot. What is simple plot? No puzzling situation without perpetua and anagnosis. Perpetua means reversal of situation. For example, killing an enemy and discovering him as a kinsman. Kinsman means some relationship he is having that killed person. Once again I tell you, perpetua means reversal of situation. For example, killing an enemy and comes to know that is discovering him as a relative person. In some one or another way, he is a relation to the murderer. Okay, so discovering him as kinsman. Anagnosis means recognition or discovery, that is a change from ignorance to knowledge. Okay, anagnosis, which means the recognition or discovery, that is a change from ignorance to knowledge. The complex plot, that is a plot that is made use of perpetua and anagnosis, is a complex plot, and it is a perfect tragedy according to Aristotle. So what Aristotle says, complex plot is the perfect tragedy. Why? Means it is made with the use of perpetua and anagnosis. So perpetua means reversal of situation will be there in a perfect tragedy, that is in complex plot, and anagnosis, that is discovery or recognition, will be there. So complex plot is the perfect tragedy according to Aristotle. Okay, so this particular e-content video will be helpful for you all to know the poetics treatises given by Aristotle and the critical theories given by Aristotle. Thank you all. Thank you one and all.